Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 1st, 2025 Regina Planning Commission meeting. At our February 25th meeting, the Regina Planning Commission voted to table the election of its vice chairperson for this year to today's meeting. In accordance with the procedure bylaw number 9004, and the committee bylaw number 2009-40, the commission member appointed as vice chairperson may be either a citizen member or a council representative appointed to the Regina Planning Commission. I will now call for nominations for vice chairperson. Is there any member of the commission that wishes to put their name forward or to nominate a fellow commission member as the vice chairperson for 2025? Mr. Sontek.
I'd like to nominate John Ashton for vice chair, if I could.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Welcome. Well then, by acclamation, Mr. Aston is appointed as vice chairperson for 2025. Congratulations. We will now move on to the formal meeting. Reports considered by the Commission at today's meeting will be considered by City Council at its meeting scheduled for April 9th, 2025. The deadline to register as a delegation for the City Council meeting is noon on Monday, April 7th, 2025. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the list of delegations? Mr. Adams. Any opposed? Carried. At the call of the chair, item RPC 25-9, future access on Scarth Street Mall, will be moved to be considered second in the agenda after RPC 25-5 to accommodate delegations that registered to speak to it. At this point, could I have a motion for approval of the minutes from the February 25th meeting of the Commission? Mr. Rasevich, Councillor Rasevich, my apologies. Any errors or omissions? Any opposed? Carried. All right, on to our first item. We have a delegation. I would like to call upon Delegation Beverly McDougald of Regina, Saskatchewan to come up. Beverly, please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you are representing, if any, and what city or town you reside in. You'll have 5 minutes to address the Commission, after which you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions that members of the Commission may have for you.
My name is Beverly McDougald, and I'm representing myself, and I live in Regina and have all my life. I was sent something in the mail about, it was a public notice, and the apartment building that was torn down is down my alley. I used to know some of the people that lived in that building. They're very poor. They used to go down to the Salvation Army and First Baptist Church to eat. I find it very interesting that in here that you said it would, on the first page, it would be a medical center, but we don't even have employees, enough employees for the medical centers we already have. So to me, That doesn't even make sense. We don't have enough doctors and nurses in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, and yet you want to build another medical facility? The other thing about this is just across the street, there is a medical center, and right behind it, there are 6 empty, vacant lots that have been like that for years that they could build anything on. So why they're wanting to rezone something across the street from residential when just across the street it's already rezoned for a mixed whatever, and there's already a medical center across the street. To me, none of this makes any sense at all. What makes sense to me is the federal government is giving out money for low-income housing. That's what we need. Also, in the last year, there have been more than this building torn down in my neighborhood on the corner of Halifax and 14th Avenue. There have been an apartment block was torn down and a tenement house was torn down because it was on fire, I guess. And the other corner was actually an apartment, and that had been torn down several years ago. And a building was built there, but it stayed empty for a while before they could even get anybody to move in. So none of this makes sense to me. Although what would make sense to me is the Glen Elm Trailer Park people are looking for a place. And I'd be quite happy to have somebody move their trailer into that spot. And it would still be residential. There is actually a trailer on a street, it's right across from Smitty's from the Golden Mile, that is on the corner. It's right across the street and has been there for years. So there has been trailers put in a residential area. So I can't see why we can't do that here. But if that doesn't happen, I think low-income housing would be excellent. There are 6 buses that go by 1 block away, 6 buses that people can use because these people usually don't have cars. There's a hospital nearby. There's lots of community support in this area for low-income people, like the new grocery store on 12th Avenue and Broad. We have a pharmacy at Shoppers. We have a lab that's across the street from that. So there's lots of things in the neighborhood. We have the Heritage Community Association down the street. So I'm thinking this would be a better choice. It should stay residential, and it should be for low-income housing. Or like I said, I wouldn't be upset if somebody from the Glen Elm Trailer Park moved in there either, because there's lots of vacant lots around that area. And like I said, there are 6 vacant lots that have been there for years. And that area is already mixed use. So why do you want to change mine?
Thank you. That was a perfect 5 minutes, by the way. Well done. Thank you very much for your presentation. Do any commission members have questions of the delegation? Thank you for addressing the commission. I'll ask that you please return to the gallery. We will now consider item RPC 25-5, zoning bylaw amendment for 1613 13th Avenue. I will ask a member of the administration to please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This item addresses an application to rezone 1613 13th Avenue from residential low-rise zone to the mixed high-rise zone. If approved, the mixed high-rise zone will allow the landowner to pursue a mix of land uses, including commercial and residential, which are authorized through this zone. The subject property is located within the Heritage neighborhood and historically accommodated a multi-family apartment building that has since been demolished. The surrounding context includes mixed high-rise zone to the north, residential low-rise to the south, and the general hospital to the east. Public notification was carried out in accordance with the City of Regina's public notice bylaw. Through this process, the city received 6 submissions, with 2 expressing concerns. The first is that the subject property should remain solely residential, and the second concern includes having more medical-related businesses. The public feedback and administration's response is included in Appendix B. Administration's review has included consideration of the public and stakeholder feedback, applicable policy and regulations, and unique factors associated with a subject property. Administration's recommendation is for approval. Thank you, and administration can answer any of your questions.
Can I have someone move the recommendation? Thank you, Mr. Aston. Would you want to speak on the report?
Can I ask a question to start with? Okay, so thank you. Through the chair to the administration, just a couple quick questions then. In the report, it uses the word, I'm just looking for the quote here. It's where, this area is not where medical services are directed, I think is the terminology. Make sure I find the right page. It's on the top of page 5 of this report. The subject property is not located within an area where medical services are directed. Is there, could you give color to that for how the zoning bylaw would direct where medical services would be located, through the chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is policy for the neighborhood that's one that was carried over from our previous amendments from late last term. And it does specify where medical-related services ought to be. So there's kind of a vague sort of bubble over sort of over the 14th Avenue and Halifax area, and then it extends north towards this property, but it doesn't extend quite this far. So the amendment is to allow for a commercial type of use outside of that area.
Okay. Just a second question. A lot of the residential zones now are mixed-use zones, as my colleague will know. And is it the case that medical clinics are not allowed in most of those mixed zones? Like mixed high-rise might lead one to think that that might be an appropriate use. So I'm just wondering if that's the case or not, through the chair.
Through the chair, a clinic is allowed in the mixed high-rise zone. The mixed high-rise zone is typically found along major arterials and different little pockets like that. So this is an extension from properties to the north that are also zoned as mixed high-rise.
Okay. Thank you.
Now we'll turn it to questions from commission members, and I see that Mr. Gase here is ready with a question.
The chair. I'm just looking at the maps here of the proposed site, and it looks like they don't go towards, it doesn't go all the way to Halifax Street. Is there a reason for that, or am I misunderstanding the proposal?
Through the chair, I believe you're referring to Appendix A1, so that is actually a separate site. The subject property is properly identified with a red dashed line, so that is a separate property.
So that property next to it would remain zoned RL?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right, I think that's my major question for now. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you to administration.
Question from Mr. Adams.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Just a very brief question on the issue of permitted commercial uses. In this case scenario, you mentioned the fuel station would still remain out and would require a discretionary use on the commercial side, or is it relatively wide open as to what commercial purposes could be placed under mixed-use high-rise? Thank you.
Through the chair, a fuel station is allowable, but it would be discretionary because of its proximity to residential.
More questions? Any other questions? Councilor Rasovich.
So development there could still be residential, right?
Through the chair, that is correct. Yeah, it allows for mixed use.
Okay. Up to, sorry, through the chair, could be like 15 stories, I guess?
Through the chair, no, the maximum height is 20 meters. So that's 4 to 5 stories.
20 meters, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's 20 just because it's mixed use.
Mr. Adams, 1 second.
Just
Go
to
ahead,
follow-
Mr. Adams.
Sorry, just to follow up on the 20 meters, I believe it's, normally it'd be 15, but it's 20 because of the commercial component, right? So it pops it up to one more threshold. So, for example, if it was medium dent, like if it was RL or RH, it would be 15, but because it's mixed high-rise, it's 20 meters, not 15?
Through the chair, the maximum height of the existing zone is also 20, so we're not
Okay.
changing the height.
Got it, thank you. And just for my own education, just while we're on the issue, on the ML designation, is it also 15 meters in height? Just for my own education. I know it's not relevant to this particular query, but I'm just trying to differentiate between ML and MH.
Through the chair, I am being told that it is 15 meters in the ML zone.
On ML, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. You're very kind.
Any more questions? Okay, I will ask the clerk. First, I'll have to ask Mr. Aston, would you like to close debate? Thank you. I will ask the clerk to start the vote. It will be a manual vote, by the way.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Aston,
In favor.
Commissioner Gaser,
In favor.
Commissioner Kell, Commissioner Sontag,
In favor.
Commissioner Wilson,
In favor.
Commissioner Adams,
In favor?
Councillor Rasovich,
Favor.
Councillor Robbins. In favor. And Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Moving to our next item, which will be a delegation. I'd like to call upon delegation Lisa Gibbons, Regina Downtown Business Improvement District.
Don't be afraid, it's fine.
Lisa, please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and what city or town you reside in. You'll have 5 minutes to address the commission, after which you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions that members of the commission may have for you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Gibbons. I am the Director of Downtown Vibrancy for Regina Downtown Business Improvement District, and I am a resident of Regina. I'm here today to speak to RPC 25-9, Future Access on Scar Street Mall. And I respectfully request a 1-month deferral on this item. This item came to us last Friday at 4 p.m. when it was posted online as part of the agenda package. Our executive director is out of town until April 14th, and our board hasn't had time to develop a position statement on what you see before you. Deferring the item 1 month will allow the board time to thoughtfully consider the report and develop a position statement. Further, we've been made aware of some changes on Scar Street with some new businesses considering to locate there, and we'd like to have some time to consult with them ahead of setting our opinion on this. So that is my request to you, to table this for 1 month to give us time to come back to you with a board position, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I see a number of commissioners have some questions. I don't know who asked first, so I'm not going to play favorites. Let's pretend I flipped a coin, and I'll start with Mr. Gassier.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Gibbons. I'm just curious, so typically this commission takes a more technical approach to some of the considerations that we make recommendations on towards council. I don't want to speak for all of my fellow commissioners, but I usually advocate that we allow more of the political discussion to be at the council level so that we can take more of an approach towards kind of the policy and aspects like that. Would it be appropriate for you and the board if the commission listened to the considerations and moved with a recommendation to council, with council having the ability to hear your request to defer it, just so that it doesn't have to come to us twice, that we can kind of consider the merits from our perspective? Do you think that that would work for the board?
I think the challenge, back to all of you, is that this will hit council on April 9th. And our executive director will not be back, and our board will not have met to have a position. I would argue that there's a few technical elements actually in this application that, as someone who is accredited as a place manager, that there are some challenges here that we would like to address before it moves forward. And ideally, we like to work together and walk together with the city so that we're not appearing at council in diverse positions. However, if it were the decision to send it to council, then we would address it at that level. But we would appreciate to come back here and have a position that we could potentially work together on instead of apart.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. That's enough for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, appreciate your presentation. Just a really minor query. It's my understanding that, this general issue has been the focus of some considerable consultation for at least a number of years. I'm just curious, has your organization participated or ever been a part of any of those formal consultations? And if so, are you at liberty to kind of say whether you've generally been supportive of pedestrian only or no?
You're asking the right person to speak her mind. Everyone does not want to hear me talk. I will first acknowledge the fact that I'm just back with downtown since August. Historically, I understand that the bid undertook some work with a consultant to develop a plan that would acknowledge the current world that we live in, which is the globe being active, some challenges that hospitality has with food distribution, so Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats as examples of those and how we accommodate in this space, and acknowledging that we have a shared street at the moment called the Plaza, which has faced its challenges, and we want to make sure that what we do with FW Hill Mall, we do it right, we take our time, it's a $25 million investment, and we walk this slowly together to build the right solution. There has been engagement. I don't know that everyone has been happy with the engagement, but definitely there has been dialogue. Politically correct, but.
Any other questions? Councillor Rasevich.
Through the chair, you mentioned 25 million. I read in this for Scarth Street, the number was 7.8 million. So I'm wondering just what the 25 million is from your perspective.
This is math that I've heard. I can neither confirm or deny where we're at. I just know there's a number of major projects within downtown, including the playground in Vic Park, piloting an angled parking solution along Hamilton that we could consider, not your job, but just things that we're looking at, and making sure that we're spending money in the right spots that are going to have a good hit. I could be off on the numbers. Please don't quote me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just asked because when I read through the report, it was the cost 7.8 million, and I was wondering where the 25 came from. So
yeah,
I guess I'll ask later.
Any other questions? Thank you for addressing the commission.
Thank you.
I ask that you please return to the gallery. We will now consider item RPC 25-9, future access on Scarth Street Mall. I will ask a member of administration to please introduce the report.
Yeah, don't touch it. Don't touch it for you.
Thank you. Administration is here to provide an update on Phase 1 of the Scarth Street Mall Revitalization Project. This phase of the project establishes the vision and conceptual design for the space that will guide the City of Regina's capital investments in alignment with our strategic priorities. This phase of work is essential to set direction for the project and align with capital work on underground infrastructure that's planned for 2027. Further design work is required to start immediately after this decision to allow for construction to start on time. The Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan currently provides direction to consider allowing vehicle traffic through the Scarth Street Mall, and as part of this phase of the project, options were investigated to understand the implications of allowing traffic on the mall, considering the site's context, technical considerations, information from other cities, and feedback that we gathered through an extensive engagement process. This report recommends that an amendment be made to the Downtown Neighborhood Plan to affirm and provide clarity that the Scarth Street Mall will proceed as a pedestrian-only public space to support downtown vibrancy and activation. Administration is also recommending that it continue to advance efforts to explore and address issues raised through the engagement process related to downtown circulation, parking, and drop-off options. We are happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Can I have someone move the recommendation? Mr. Gaisier. Do you wish to speak on the report?
I guess to begin, I would be curious if the administration has any comment on the bids requested to defer it for a month. And if so, or if not, if they could just provide some context as to their recommendation or their support or lack thereof. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. We were previously made aware of the request to defer this for a month. It would be the administration's preference to continue the conversation with council. We have done extensive consultation on this project dating back to 2023 with various touch points with stakeholders, including Regina Downtown Bid. We last met with them in February as a board and went through and walked through the proposal. This proposal that you have in front of you through the package has been available publicly since mid-January, and we are asking public feedback on the conceptual design and the proposal to remain pedestrian only since January.
That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Was the plan connected to the end of the project? Was that in conjunction with the downtown bid?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I turned my mic off. Just a little bit of clarity. Are you looking for clarity on whether the conceptual design that you have in your package was presented?
I guess I'm a bit confused in the two directions because there has, as Lisa noted, there had been internal review of the area and a consultant on board and a design made for that. Is this a different design from then what downtown bid had?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, we can provide some clarity on that. The bid had done their own consultant and design a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And this was done internally through city administration and our consultation processes.
Okay. And then next, was there, I guess, extensive discussions with the stakeholders that are on Scar Street now? The survey was interesting, but I have a hard time understanding what part of the survey comes from people that already religiously use 13th right now and who doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to pass this question along to Kim Sayre. She's been the project manager of the Scar Street project, and she's happy to dive into any of those specifics.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, our consultation started in 2023 with a public survey, so that went to everybody in the community. And there was an opportunity for people to share where they reside as part of that, and there was a portion that lived downtown and others in other parts of the city, so it was very mixed and got very diverse. More closely over the last year, we've spent our time talking more about what people want to see and do in the mall, and we took a different approach, which included public consultation where people could, from anywhere in the community, could provide their feedback online through Be Heard, as well as we had some pop-up events downtown where people were actually coming to the farmers market or visiting us on Scar Street, so we could collect their feedback there. And we also contacted the businesses and property owners and other occupants along the Scar Street Mall itself to find out their thoughts on what they would like to see going forward and help to inform our process and ultimately the outcome that we have before you.
Okay. And I'm curious to know why the direction of the survey is very heavily around like perceived security and safety. And I think that's like a broader conversation of what people actually feel and what is perceived safety. And I currently work downtown, and I worked downtown 12 years ago, and the difference in perceived safety is very different. I think it has a lot to do with the number of people downtown. And so I'm curious about how that, in your mind, relates to traffic flow and how that would somehow support perceived safety. Does that question make sense? It makes sense in my brain.
That is feedback we've heard from folks through the chair, was concerns about safety and people could respond to particular situations, but there was also this perception from folks on other things. And with traffic being one of the solutions that was identified as maybe this will make me feel more safe. And are you asking, just for clarification, on whether the proposed concept that we have before you addresses that? Is that what you're looking for clarity on?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about how limited traffic flow through and perceived safety connect.
For sure. Through the chair, safety is one of the things that's considered within the conceptual design itself, whether it's, there's aspects of moving people closer to the buildings to improve safety between businesses and the street. There's other ways of like organizing the space where people are sitting and how the structures are within the space itself. And at the same time, trying to think about how it relates to vehicles going down the street. That's one thing that could be considered. So those are like the options that we were looking at. And at the same time, there's a lot of other work that's happening outside of this. And so there's pieces that you can do on the street itself for improving safety, but there's a lot more effort that's required among many players to help improve that feeling of safety, the real safety that people are feeling, whether they are customers on the street, whether they are businesses on the street, or reside on the street as their living space. And so it's kind of a combination of a number of those things. So what we've proposed is considering the space and looking at all the different safety aspects that we can from a design perspective, while also considering that there's other work to be done, whether that's with the police service and some of the alternative response officers and other community members that are in the space itself to help improve that safety and create places that people want to be and just create a different environment of which the design of the space is one part.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up now, after I've thought about it a bit more, my colleague, Commissioner Gasser's question. As it relates specifically to this recommendation, is it administration's position that there has been adequate time for, I think it was executive director and the board to have responded to this recommendation already? Is that what they're saying?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'll address that since it was my previous question that kind of spurred your additional question. So I will reiterate that the information that we have presented to you in the conceptual design has been public since mid-January. We met with the board and walked through the concept of pedestrian only in February, and had availability for public to comment on the design that you see before you of pedestrian only since January.
Okay, and then just a supplementary question. Has there been a response from them then?
We heard, through you, Mr. Chair, we heard certainly comments through our verbal conversations at the board level. There was certainly conversations about downtown in general and the space and some of the other challenges that that are going on in and around the space, but there was some support for revitalizing the space and having, intention to do investment downtown. So there was a mix from the board specifically, and then you have the rest of the results from public and other consultations in your package.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Yes, through the chair, and maybe just further to Maynard's comments, I just note, maybe, in support of what administration is saying, that I think I'm reading this right, that on January 28th, according to your summary of consultations, you met in person with both the Chamber of Commerce and on February 3rd with the Regina Downtown Improvement Business District, right? So there were 2 in-person meetings that happened on the concept. I'm reading that right?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I was present at both.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's helpful. I think there's been an opportunity there. Just out of curiosity, just procedurally, when would this item have been added to this agenda for Regina City Planning? Like, was it just in the last few weeks, or last week, or when we made the agenda for the, I think you sent it out last Monday, so it's been on the docket for at least a week.
Through the chair, I can speak to that. So under our procedure bylaw, the agendas go out and are published publicly the Friday before the meeting, and then delegations are given until typically the following Monday at 12 p.m. to register.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may add, we've had information on our Public Be Heard page that presentations were going to be made to Regina Planning Commission and Council in the spring of 2025.
I'll ask the mover, would you like to close debate? I'll ask the clerk to start the vote. Yeah. Wants to close it. He wants to close it. I just did. I turned it on, then I turned it off. Sorry.
I'm happy, thank you.
He's good. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to turn on some microphones here.
We're going to do this
Okay.
old school again.
You bet.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Gaisier,
In favor.
Commissioner Kell, Commissioner Sontag,
In favor.
Commissioner Wilson,
In favor.
Commissioner Adams,
In favor?
Commissioner Aston,
In favor?
Councillor Rashevich,
In favor.
Councillor Radix,
In favor.
and Mr. Chair.
In favor.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. Move on. We will now consider item RPC 25-6, zoning bylaw amendment, 1300 North Courtney Street. I'll ask a member of the administration to please introduce the report. Back in the hot seat. Who's going to do that for me? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of Planning Commission. This item addresses an application to rezone part of 1300 North Courtney Street from UH Urban Holding Zone to RL Residential Low-Rise Zone. If approved, the residential low-rise zone would allow for a mixture of low-rise, multi-unit building types to be pursued. The subject property is within the Rosewood neighborhood and surrounded by various land uses, including a school, place of worship, medium-density residential, and a daycare. The proposed rezoning is considered suitable for the location and supports objectives of the official community plan related to complete neighborhoods by creating opportunities for residential diversity. Public notification was carried out in accordance with the City of Regina's public notice bylaw. Through this process, there were 2 submissions received, both expressing concerns related to the type of future development, being multi-unit, and conflicting priorities of the city. The public feedback and administration's response is included as Appendix B. Administration's review has has included a consideration of public and stakeholder feedback, applicable policies and regulations, and the unique factors associated with the subject property location. Administration's recommendation is for approval. Thank you. Administration is available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Can I have someone move the recommendation? Mr. Adams. Guess what? You get to speak on it now.
It's a good way to flip that coin.
Yeah.
I only have one question. It was just the notion that the city administration says there are, quote, known wastewater limitations in this area. So that's a concern to me, and just wouldn't mind a general quick discussion about how this area is serviced and what maybe that, what kind of incremental pressures that might put on you to service it, or the developer. Thank you.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. Just high level, the lift station that the project is currently using is the Maple Ridge lift station, and it's been, certainly mentioned before that upgrades are needed to that lift station. The proponent is willing to do those upgrades to achieve the results here that are proposed in the package here.
But obviously, given all the other significant amenities, there are no other infrastructure concerns, really. It's complete. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just confirming if that was a question.
Yeah, my apologies, I should have framed it as a question. I'm guessing, given there's a large school right there, obviously it has everything else it needs to move forward.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we look at those things in our review, and certainly base our recommendation on if those elements are there or not. And we've noted one element that certainly needs attention, and it's being addressed, but others have met the criteria for us to provide a recommendation of approving.
Mr. Ashton.
Oh, thank you. Through the chair. Maybe it's just the way the one picture was presented, but Appendix A1 and A2 show a U-shaped site for this parcel. And then when you get to A3, it highlights kind of a rectangle and says that's the part that's being rezoned. Is it the intention to rezone the whole parcel and not just the highlighted part? Through the chair.
Through Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Mario to answer that.
Thank you. Through the chair, if you refer to Appendix A2, where it says I guess there's two 132s, but the 132 that's fronting Mapleford Boulevard, and as well that skinnier piece between 131A and MR1, that's already zoned as RL, so that doesn't require rezoning. So this rezoning is only for sort of that remnant piece, where there's that lower indication of 132, if that makes sense.
Through the chair, yeah, I was seeing the 132, so I thought it was maybe the same parcel, but what I think I'm hearing is there are three different parcels there, perhaps.
Through the chair, there is also a subdivision application that the administration is processing, so this is just for the rezoning.
Okay.
But the parcel at the end of the day will be that U shape.
And just to clarify, the other two parts are already the same zone?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I think the right side has been winning here with the questions. Left side, not so much today. I'll ask the mover if they would like to close debate.
Yes, I would like to close the debate.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to start the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one moment here again while I everybody's microphones. Commissioner Adams.
In favor?
Commissioner Aston.
In favor?
Commissioner Gaisier.
In favor.
Commissioner Kell.
In favor.
Commissioner Sontag.
In favor?
Commissioner Wilson.
In favor.
Councillor Rashevich.
Favor.
Councillor Raddatz. Favor. And Mr. Chair.
In favor.
Motion carries 9-0.
We will now consider item RPC 25-8, Official Community Plan Amendments, Complete Neighborhoods. Am I missing one? Did I skip one? RPC 25-7, Zoning Bylaw Amendment on 832 McCarthy Boulevard. I got ahead of myself there. My apologies. I'll ask a member of administration to please introduce the report. Who would that be? All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This agenda item addresses an application to rezone 832 McCarthy Boulevard, which is located in the Mount Royal neighborhood, from the institutional zone to the mixed high-rise zone. If approved, this will allow the landowner to pursue various land opportunities authorized through the zone, including commercial, institutional, and medium or high-density residential. The subject property is located within the Mount Royal neighborhood and currently accommodates an institutional land use, which is the Western College of Remedial Massage Therapies. The surrounding land use is mainly low-density residential. However, the subject property fronts McCarthy Boulevard, which is an arterial roadway with transit service, and the north property line is contiguous with a neighborhood commercial node. Public notification of the application was carried out in accordance with the city's public notice bylaw. Through this process, the city received 9 submissions, including 3 submissions from residents expressing concern that new development may conflict with community character or result in traffic issues. The public feedback and administration's response is included as Appendix B. Administration's review has included consideration of public and stakeholder feedback, policy and regulations, as well as the unique factors associated with the location. It is noted that the subject property fronts an arterial roadway with transit service and is adjacent to an existing commercial node zoned mixed high-rise. The current land use is an institutional business operation, and additionally, the proposed zone will not result in height regulations that exceed what current zoning already allows. Based on these factors, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is for approval. Thank you, and the administration is available to answer any questions.
Thank you. May I have somebody remove the report? Councillor Rashevich, would you like to speak to the report?
No.
Mr. Aston.
Through the chair, is it the case that the institutional facility, the school, is still operating at this time? Through the chair, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, through the chair, yes.
Thank you for that. I assumed it was, but I just wasn't certain. So, understanding from reading the report is there might be interest in adding residential to the site. Would it be the case that the existing institutional use plus the mixed high-rise, if there was some kind of residential use, would not have any parking requirements? Or what would be the parking requirements? I'll phrase it as a question that way, through the chair.
Through the chair, there's a possibility that residential could be added, but that's not the applicant's intent. The applicant's intent is for a medical clinic, which is not currently allowed within the institutional zone. And in any zone within the city, there is no parking requirements, only recommendations.
I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Any other questions? Ms. Kell, go ahead.
Has consideration given to the fact that McCarthy has the boulevard in the middle? So if you're trying to go north from any of that spot, you're either going through someone else's back alley, if the area permits you to do so, or you're going south and then making a UE to go back up north?
Through the chair, yes, that has been a factor. We do circulate to our technical colleagues who look at the potential implications of access and so forth. You are correct that there would be limited access if you're going northbound on McCarthy. Ultimately, that could be a limiting factor in terms of what the development potential of the site could be. It does have good access for southbound though, which may lend itself to certain range of commercial uses, but it is a factor for sure.
It only has good access from southbound if you're coming from the north, but going also from the south going around, you still have to find a way through the gas station or KFC to like get back to that spot.
Through the chair, yeah, I agree on that, yeah. There is no immediate left-in access if you're going northbound, that's correct.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Adams.
Yes, through the chair, and again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself just because I'm trying to get these height restrictions straight. But in theory, it's institutional now, so normally it would be 15 meters, but under a discretionary use, you could go to 30. So in this case scenario, under mixed MH, it would be a minimum of 15, but you could go to 20 meters on discretionary use. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, 20 meters would be as a permitted use, not discretionary.
Is not discretionary. So it could be as high as 20 meters then. They could go as high as 20 meters.
That's correct, yeah.
Right, okay. And that would be like in ballpark 5 stories or something like that, yeah. I noted only just because obviously it is very much, single dwelling bungalows to the north and the south. And so if it were ultimately commercial on the bottom and a 5-story building, it is a rather substantial change, but I agree it's definitely in line with intensification. The only other question I had was just, was there any consideration of just ML, given that you said there wasn't really a plan to develop it as residential? It's primarily a commercial interest, so why wasn't ML chosen as opposed to MH?
Through the chair, I would say that the primary consideration is this is being considered kind of as an extension of the existing zoning on that corner of Nicholson and McCarthy, so this is really just an extension of what's already existing.
Would it be your understanding, I'm sorry you may not have this at your immediate disposal, but the other commercial like the corporations on Mickelson and McCarthy, are they also MH as well, or?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
If you refer to Appendix A2.
That helps, thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm kind of following along from Commissioner Kell and Commissioner Adams. It seems to me that given, first of all, I appreciate and I accept the idea of keeping it in line with MH, which is neighboring. But considering that, first of all, I think Ms. Kell said something that I hadn't considered before regarding access, and also sort of following along with what Mr. Adams pointed out. While it is aligned with MH, which is neighboring, on the other side it's R1, and so it kind of, to me, it would seem that a less intense use could potentially have, some bridging effect between the portion that's zoned MH and the portion that's owned R1, in the sense that kind of if we wanted there to be consistency along that lot on McCarthy Boulevard, it would kind of make sense to me to follow it all the way from Mickelson Drive to at least to Oriole Place, if not even further south, just to kind of have some cohesion and consistency with that block face. And considering that I don't know who the proponent is, but considering that at present they don't seem to be proposing a particular development, I almost wonder if it would make sense for us to recommend ML or another. I mean, I think mixed use makes total sense on this block face, but if there's a lower intensity or lower intensification that would be more appropriate until we have more information, I'd be open to considering that. I'm curious if administration has any comment on that. I hope with the chair's permission, I'd like to ask that question as broadly as possible, just because I know that I'm kind of throwing a curveball. So, thank you.
Through the chair, I'll take a stab at that. So I guess I would point out that on Appendix A2, we have MH zoning. It backs onto RN, so it's not an unusual condition. This would really just be extending that exact same zoning and interface further to the south. The other factor is that the MH zone is intended for arterial streets. McCarthy is an arterial street. With regard to potentially extending the zone into R1, that is something we could consider further down the line. But when we do get rezoning applications for single parcels by a landowner, we tend to keep it within what the request is being asked of us. And if there is an opportunity to follow up at a later date, then that's something we can potentially do. So that being said, those factors are why we have recommended MH rather than ML.
So through the chair, thank you very much. I appreciate that about the arterial road. Honestly, I think for the consideration of my fellow commissioners, I could probably be persuaded either way. I think that administration's answer is reasonable, but I'm also somewhat persuaded. I don't want to put words in your mouths, but I'm somewhat persuaded by the commissioners that seem to be leaning, or if not leaning towards, or recommending at least considering lower intensity. I could probably see myself persuaded either way if commission has thoughts on that. So I'm finished though, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Could get the
Anyone else have anything to add? I do, but I'll wait.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments. Through the chair, there's comments in this agenda item, and I think one or two of the other ones where the applicant has indicated, but it's not actually part of the submission. It's sort of a notional they might, or they're thinking of it. I'm struggling with some of those a little bit. I actually don't remember seeing that too often before. Maybe I'm just not remembering it. But often, like, we kind of have to make a decision on what's in front of us. And so I think that's leading me to a little bit of, concern, because the applicant can say something, and maybe I'll do this, and I'm putting weight into some of those comments. And I'd like to just hear administration's thoughts on that, I guess. So.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a good question, and we recognize that some members of Planning Commission and actually some members of Council, typically want to know what's going on the site. When we get applications for rezoning of a site, it's the proponent or the landowner getting ready to pursue development opportunity, and we're able to, as administration, evaluate the proposal based on the zoning provisions. And so we look at the wide range of zoning permissions within the zone and evaluate it, knowing that exact same thing, that there could be anything within the zone permitted or discretionary. And when we propose a recommendation, we know that going into those recommendations. And it is, we've been encouraged to try to provide as much flexibility as possible for investors and for developers. And so pre-zoning a property is sometimes more desirable for them before pursuing architectural drawings or investing heavily in, infrastructure design and improvements. And so knowing that, council has approved the bylaw amendment or considered the rezoning provides that first level of assurance for the landowner.
Thank you.
Oh, just one more question of clarity that occurred to me. I was just curious, this is 2 today where there has been potentially some consideration of a medical facility that is being classified as commercial as opposed to institutional. So I'm just curious, like, historically, would a medical center, like a wellness center, a community clinic, or a addictions treatment center or something, have typically been institutional? Like, why are medical centers now being lumped in with commercial?
Through the chair, there's a broad range of uses that could be considered a medical clinic, a doctor's office, a dentist's office. Those are typically found in commercial zones. That's long since been the case. You raise a good question though, like should they be allowed in institutional zones? Institutional zones are, they tend to be buried a lot of times in the middle of neighborhoods. That's what schools are zoned. So, there's different contexts for each type of zone, but typically these are higher generating traffic uses, and that tends to get lumped in with a commercial zone or a mixed use zone.
There's a lot of medical professions that, are beyond just general practitioners, so I get it, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so first off, I'm just going to pre-qualify that, excuse my ignorance, but, okay, so going back to access off of McCarthy here with the boulevard, so here's my ignorant question because I don't know the answer, obviously, but can we not, like, move or cut the boulevard? I'm sorry. Anyways, go ahead, please tell me.
Through the chair, we do get requests for changes to infrastructure in that way. They can be evaluated, and if it's determined that is possible, then we could do that. However, typically, it's not something that's really encouraged unless it's necessary. It tends to really cut down on the boulevard. The boulevard is there to protect access and beautify the street and things like that. So there's different considerations. We're compromising public infrastructure, but we're also providing better access. So it is a possibility with this case.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so I don't feel bad now asking that. And so then if not, then the option, I think Commissioner mentioned, is can accessibility come around to the back side then of that? So we're talking going down Mickelson and coming in the back way there.
Through the chair, that is correct. That's the easiest way that someone going northbound would have to access the site.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I'll ask one. Just in terms of the current MH piece on the corner of Mickelson and McCarthy, it's backing onto 6 properties, or 6 properties back onto it. Am I seeing that correctly? And then the proposed piece, if it is MH, will have 4 properties backing onto it, 4 and a touch on either side. Do you remember what we heard from those residents?
Through the chair, I will ask Ms. Burke to maybe summarize what the comments were.
Okay, through the chair, most of the concerns were about height potentially, and like people being able to see into their backyards. So height was definitely like a big one. There was like 1 or 2 concerns with maybe the alleyway being used, but it's already being used by those businesses already. But yeah, height was like the main concern for that because they weren't sure if the building would look down onto their backyards or not.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, so in terms of the comments here, when you're putting these reports, so there was only 9 people that had concerns?
Through the chair, technically 10, but 1 comment came after the report was written, but yeah, only 9 people responded back.
And so how long was that consultation piece for, like?
Through the chair, 3 weeks altogether.
So that's kind of the normal?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Not to beat a dead horse, but is there an option to review what we're proposing to change it to, as per what Mr. Glasser mentioned?
Through the chair, the applicant had requested a rezoning to MH. That is what we've evaluated, that's what we've recommended. If Regina Planning Commission wishes to recommend something different to City Council, they're welcome to do that through their own processes.
I'll ask the mover, do you wish to speak on the report?
No.
Or to close debate, sorry.
Nope.
Okay. I'll ask the clerk to start the vote.
Sorry, I'm new to this, but I understand the implications of completely declining it, and so that's not my intent, but I guess I don't agree with what the zoning option is now. So I've asked, like, what are my options? Because again, I don't want to dissuade the applicant of pursuing the lot, but I think that another zone needs to be looked at.
If I may, Mr. Chair, procedurally, there would be really a couple options here. One would be to oppose it, and then if enough members were opposed, a new motion would have to be moved in place. That's the simplest, in my opinion. My advice, straightforward way forward. If a member had wanted to move to refer instead, that would send the entire report back to administration, and they would have to then bring a brand new report. So there's additional work and there's implications that would be included in the other options. So administration, when they're writing the reports, give another option section, and it gives the considerations and the advantages for each option. So at this time, if you would not be wanting to move to refer the entire report back to administration, my recommendation or my advice in a procedural capacity would be that you would either ask for one of the council members to bring it to discussion at City Council, to raise it as part of the introduction of the report during City Council, or to vote in opposition. Otherwise, if you wanted to, you could move a motion to refer. However, that then, like, we have to then vote twice. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify the advice of the clerk. So if we do move to oppose, he asked as a question, would we be able to revisit this same topic? Like, would we be able to reopen it in this meeting? So that, like, my goal is to listen to Commissioner Kell's considerations and debate them appropriately in this meeting if at all possible. Would we be able to reopen that if we voted as a block?
So through the chair, if you were to vote in opposition and there were enough folks in favor, it would still pass on and that would close debate. On the other side of things, if a referral motion is moved,
It would go back.
it would go back to administration.
Okay.
So the best option may be to ask that the chair brings a summary of this to City Council, or you could recommend that City Council refer it as well. But that would again be another motion that would be moved to the floor. And then the chair would need to give a reason why that is the recommendation of the Regina Planning Commission at the meeting and give a summary of the discussion.
Got it. I'm happy, not to throw you under any trucks, but I'm happy to let the commissioner across the aisle make that decision based on what she thinks is best for the concerns that she has, in support of the concerns that she has, so that they're considered by council appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Radens.
Okay, so again, I just need clarification before we do that. And so what are the implications from going for what you're proposing? So I understand, because I'm not quite clear. So, thanks, Audra.
Through the chair. So the evaluation that we've provided you within the report is the evaluation on the MH. We're satisfied and happy to recommend approval with that zoning in place, understanding the implications. So that being said, the ML zone has also been thrown out there as an option. We have not fully evaluated that with the applicant. It does not provide as much flexibility in terms of permitted uses. There would be some potentially different size implications for types of businesses that may be proposed for the site, and then some height differences from the MH. So the flexibility available to the applicant would not be as great, and we're not, we obviously haven't had a chance to have a conversation with the applicant on whether that's something that they would still want to pursue.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, through you, the chair. I guess I wanted to speak in favor of approving the motion. I grew up close to here and I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. And I guess I've driven past it several times since reading the package, dropping off kids at grandmother's house. And I think to me, it just seemed like a win. I think there's too busy, there's a gas station and a fast food restaurant right there that people are accessing from both, and it's not creating a lot of traffic issues. It's a major arterial road with a lot of traffic on it. There is transit. This seemed like a straightforward proposal to me, and I can't picture a lot of like MH development that I would vote against, I guess.
For the land use, I think it's appropriate, and I can't see myself, if, depending on what the building is, not deciding that MH, as long as it falls within that MH, I can't see myself voting against it. So I just wanted to speak in favor of that.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Yes, I apologize for asking this, but I just wondered if administration could remind me whether McCarthy Boulevard is one of the primary intensification routes in the maps that were approved last spring. Do you recall? And just notably on zoning, for what it's worth, you guys do an amazing job, but for what it's worth in future, for any zoning change, there may be some value in just noting whether the property in question is a primary or secondary intensification road in the note. I think that's always worth clarifying for the commission, given its preeminence in the new driving force behind development. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. McCarthy Boulevard is not a primary intensification corridor. There are nodes further to the north around the Normanview area, which would fall into that. This, however, is not. I would point out that this similar zoning situation would exist within that primary intensification corridor area. There would be a similar potential for MH zoning to be right adjacent to low density, if that is the main concern. And yeah, I would leave it. Oh, the other comment I wanted to make is in terms of deciding whether or not to rezone one zone or another. The zoning bylaw does give guidance in terms of the intent and application and purpose of a zone. And one of the key criteria that we use in differentiating a property that could be potentially zoned for ML or MH is the type of street. In this case, as I said before, it is on a arterial street, which is typically appropriate for a MH zone.
Thank you. That's very good.
Hey, Autumn. Okay, so I need clarification on the difference between the ML and the MH, so that I can understand. Please explain.
Through the chair, at a high level, the ML zone, if I could give you some examples, is applied in local contexts. It's applied along 13th Avenue, adjacent to downtown, 11th Avenue to the east of downtown, as well as some more local types of contexts. I think along Regina Avenue and Elphinstone is ML. So they're typically smaller or isolated or embedded into neighborhoods. In terms of use, the range of land uses is a little bit more constrained. It does require typically a discretionary use above 300 square meters, so around 3,000 square feet. The height is a little bit lower. I think as we mentioned previously, it's at 15 meters rather than 20 as per the MH zone. The MH zone allows for a little bit broader range of land uses. It does allow for things like fuel stations as a discretionary use and a little bit more intense development that is typical of a arterial street rather than a more local street.
And so I guess what I'm asking then is in comparison to the MH, so in regards to intensification, so if we want more units, more housing, more there, what is better, ML or MH?
Through the chair, the MH zone would potentially allow for greater intensification.
Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Adams.
Just further to that, though, again, I really do want to understand on fuel stations, is MH, it's an auto consideration, or a fuel station is always discretionary use?
Through the chair, there is a requirement that it would be a discretionary use, I believe, within 70 meters, if the fuel pump itself is within 70 meters of a residential property. So in this case, yeah, it would be.
It would be
Yeah.
discretionary, yeah. Thank you.
Further questions? Ready to close this? Who moved it? Counselor? Closing it?
Close.
I'll ask the clerk to start the vote.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Ashevich?
I'm up first?
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
Say Adams, in favor.
Commissioner Aston?
In favor.
Commissioner Dacier?
Favor.
Commissioner Kell?
Favor.
Commissioner Sontag?
In favor.
Commissioner Wilson?
In favor.
Councillor Adams?
In favor.
And Mr. Chair?
In favor.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. So typically, we are mandatorily required to take a recess now, 15 minutes. We have one more item on the agenda. Just looking around to see if anyone would like a bio break. Yeah. You'd like to continue. Would everyone like to continue to the last piece? Mr. Adams, did you have something to ask about this, about the break, or something else?
Would be okay with the chair if I just made one comment generally outside of the agenda. I just wanted to follow up on John's comment that I do feel that one of the challenges the commission has had is considering zoning amendments in absence of a development, at least a conceptual plan, and I do think that is an important consideration for the commission. I recognize that developers often don't want to expend the planning funds without some conception of what their vision, whether their vision is conceivable under a zoning amendment. But I do think that, you know, you brought forward this notion of a complete neighborhood, and I think it's a lot of these decisions historically appear to have been taken rather haphazardly. Like, to be blunt, I would have opposed this last motion if the adjacent lots had been ML, because there's no reason to be MH for a KFC. So,
Mr. Adams, I thank you, but we're a bit outside of where we should have been talking about this.
although I do think it's legitimate for the chair just to bring some flavor back to council. Is that not true when you do your minutes, or is it only in cases where it's not approved?
We had this opened. You could have talked about it
Okay.
before we closed debate.
I'll let it be then. It's all good. I'll remember that.
Great. Oh, anyone else opposed to continuing? You want to continue with, you want to take the break? Sure, let's do that. 15 minutes. We'll be back at 5:50. We'll now consider item RPC 25-8, Official Community Plan Amendments, Complete Neighborhoods. May I ask a member of administration to please introduce the report? Go ahead.
Through the chair. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Nitya Agarwal, a City Planner 2 with the City Planning Branch. The report before you has the amendments of the Official Community Plan, bylaw number 2013-48, related to complete neighborhoods. It has been 10 years since Design Regina, the official community plan, has been in effect. We continually monitor changes and adapt policy according to priorities. This is necessary to ensure that the OCP remains relevant and useful. City Council's approval is required for changes to the OCP, as this is a key strategic bylaw which informs development policy for the city. The proposed amendments in this report aim to improve the existing policies to ensure we are developing safe and inclusive neighborhoods that are easy to get around and that have a mix of housing choices, amenities, and services. Amendments will help align the OCP with community safety and well-being, environmental sustainability, and creating vibrant communities. General themes that are covered in this report include intensification, local commercial options, parks and open space distribution, new school site design, and other minor updates. Higher level strategic directions regarding urban growth and infill policy are currently under review and are forthcoming later this year. These amendments will apply to new developments citywide, regardless of where the development occurs. Administration seeks the recommendation of approval and is happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have. Thank you.
Station. Thank you. Mr. Casier. Would you wish to speak to it? Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for your presentation. So at the end, you said this will apply to new developments throughout the city. And that's kind of, it's not necessarily developments in new neighborhoods, it's developments citywide, regardless of whether it's existing neighborhoods or new neighborhoods. Is that right?
Yeah, it applies to the existing and the new neighborhoods as well.
Excellent. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. First, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've done there. Obviously, that was a very complex document, and the staff that worked on even the summary of appendices did a very good job, so thank you for that. I do have several questions, though, so I'm sorry to the chair and everyone present, but that's why we're here. So the first one was answered by Jordan. I just wanted to confirm that it does apply to existing as well as new. So you've answered that, so thank you. So just the first one, I noted that under the Indigenous engagement consultation piece, you do note that the city will have some new guidelines around the city's Indigenous framework. And just forgive me while I walk through the logic here, but you have several sections under Goal 6 on relationships between plans, and I did wonder if there may be some value in at least mentioning the Indigenous engagement plan or the framework in terms of the relationship of this document to plans. And one specific query might, for example, be, would this document help to guide developments on urban reserves? So that might be one question for you. Autumn, sure, yeah.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So I will address your last question first. When a piece of property is turned into reserve status, it's outside of the jurisdiction of the city. And so the First Nation who is developing that property typically enters into an agreement with the municipality about compatibility, but the jurisdiction is completely within their authority. And so no, our policies through OCPs and zoning bylaws do not apply on urban reserve. And then, yeah, the relationship to the Indigenous framework and the consultation document is still something that we hope to address in the near future, and would certainly bring forward amendments as those pieces start to develop. We didn't have those necessarily embedded in this amendment, and these were seen as minor amendments to ensure that policies were applied citywide and not just through new greenfield growth areas.
Just a follow-up question on the urban reserve. So I accept the notion of jurisdiction, although in theory, would a municipal services agreement be guided, at least in part, by the guidelines set out here for neighborhoods, in theory?
Certainly there's conversation of compatibility and ensuring that service provision can be provided if that's something that is wanted on the urban reserve property. But certainly it's a conversation and an agreement between the two jurisdictions on what actually takes place on that property. Again, the authority is within the First Nations authority.
Right, and on the broader issue of the future, and I'm sorry, I don't like this word, but I'll use it for now, the indigenization of the plan, that's something that could be done at a later date or brought forward in alignment with the city as it continues to do its consultation and engagement with Indigenous entities. Would that be fair to say, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's important to recognize that we're always learning and we're always evolving policies and trying to do what's best for the community. So as we continue with our conversations with all people who want to grow and live within the community, that's certainly something that we'll bring forward as recommendations through this Planning Commission and then through Council.
Okay, that's excellent. That's a good response. So second question, and just further to, again, amendments number 17 to 20, goal 6, relationship between the plans, quote. Is there any value in mentioning the other larger plans? Like I'm thinking of the Regina Airport Authority. Like does that need to be referenced at all? Like plans that might fall outside the jurisdiction of the city, but that nevertheless still impact city development?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I might start and then ask Mr. Mario to provide some feedback. Again, those areas are the PCC and the airport, they're their own authority. I think the reference to the other plans are master plans and other things within the municipality's control, making sure that they're in alignment and making sure that there's clarity on policies that are guiding growth and guiding development. And that was the focus of this project. Of course, we're always talking to our other partners who have their own planning documents and ensuring that there's alignment there. But for this particular exercise, it was our master plans and other municipal documents that we wanted to make sure that there was alignment. And I'll just check in with Mr. Mario and see if he has anything else to add.
Through the chair, just one comment. So what you see in front of you today is only what's changing. It doesn't show exactly what's in the plan. We do have an entire chapter. It's one of our longest chapters about regional planning, and it does go into a lot of detail about cooperation with the RM in particular, but also other regional partners. So yeah, there is strong policy within the plan today as it is. It's not being changed.
And I'll just finish on that point. So then just on, I think it's Amendment 10, but it's actually 37 where you define open space. I just noted, for example, that you do mention Wascana Center, but you don't mention, say, for example, the RCMP or the University of Regina or, say, the Airport Authority, or like, was there a reasoning behind isolating the Wascana Center and not other large institutional players within the city's limits? It'd be like the very last page, you define 37. I think it's even under Amendment 10, but you do specifically reference Wascana Center. So I'm just curious why it's referenced, but none of the other large institutional players, and whether there may be some value in just noting those players as well.
Through the chair, I would say that Wascana Center obviously plays a huge part in the open space system. It's a massive asset to the city, and that may be why it's specifically mentioned within our open space policies. And again, just previous to my other comment, the other entities such as the airport and other large institutions such as the university are mentioned elsewhere in the document.
Right.
Maybe
In the
not
plan.
reflected in these
Yeah.
changed policies,
Right.
but there are those references within the policy.
Okay, that's good. If you're comfortable with that, that's great. So next question, just on the issue of local commercial streets and nodes, I recognize that these are guidelines per se, although I also note that in the city's initial remarks, you do reference, quote, this is a key strategic bylaw, and it would apply to existing citywide neighborhoods. So is it the intent to open up all residential communities to the potential for local community, commercial streets and nodes? Like I'm just gonna throw one out there, like in Old Lakeview, could you theoretically have a commercial node or a commercial street that under the new guidelines on is any neighborhood eligible for a commercial street or node under this new policy or new set of guidelines?
Through the chair, the intent is that these policies would apply to any neighborhood. That doesn't mean that any part of any neighborhood is appropriate. I think we already have a good framework and distribution of local commercial land uses within existing neighborhoods, some more than others. So these policies are really intended to guide those potential changes as they come forward. There may be opportunities that previously never existed in a neighborhood. These policies would be available to us and City Council to evaluate whether or not any proposed changes to neighborhoods would be appropriate. So that's really the intent, to try to guide decision making. But yes, at the end of the day, we are trying to encourage commercial services and different amenities within neighborhoods. But these policies attempt to do it in a strategic way.
And I certainly respect that, and I also appreciate the need for harmonization. The balance to that, though, is in repealing all the community and neighborhood plans, we also lose some of the balancing of how, say, a commercial street or node might be reflected within an existing neighborhood that no longer has a neighborhood plan, per se. So that was one of my concerns when we repealed those neighborhood plans. But ultimately, I think your answer is that generally this is to guide, new neighborhoods and the development of new neighborhoods that should have at least some commercial footprint. But in theory, by doing that, we're basically saying any neighborhood could, develop a commercial presence. And I'm not sure I'm quite comfortable with that, but I'll move on because you answered it. But for the value of the other commissioners here, it's one thing I was concerned about. Just briefly, like for what it's worth, because I don't see it referenced anywhere, but like where would you see an emergency housing shelter fitting within this set of guidelines?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what you're seeing in front of you is the changes that are being made to ensure that there's complete neighborhoods throughout the city.
Sure.
What you're not seeing in front of you is the remainder of what's
Sure.
contained within the official community plan. And so there's still policies that guide ensuring that there's a complete spectrum of housing choices within neighborhoods. That is furthered through zoning provisions and guidance that we have through regulatory means. So I'll just maybe leave it there, because what you're asking is maybe not being changed today, but that doesn't mean that we don't have provisions to ensure that there's a spectrum of housing within communities to ensure that there's a place for anybody to live.
No, and that's fair, and I'm not asking you to reopen the can of worms on, that's been before council and fairly controversial on that issue, but I just didn't see any reference to, those kinds of much needed, but nevertheless challenging kinds of developments that have been the focus of considerable scrutiny and contentiousness. They might include other things like, an addictions treatment center or something like that. But if you say that's part of the broader OCP, that, I can accept that. It's just certainly that any amendments to the guidelines that you've made, that's one area that popped out to me that it's silent on. And so if we're thinking comprehensively, we probably should have something on that too. If we're going to guide schools and we're going to guide parks and we're going to guide commercial, then you might want to deal with other social goods as well. So that's just for what it's worth. And just on the issue of the OCP itself, you do note that I think it was adopted in 2014. Is there any plan to also update the OCP itself? So it's now more than a decade old, or I may be wrong about that, but the note says it was adopted in 2014. I'm sure it's been amended, but is it something that's renewed on a cycle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an amendment to the official community plan.
Right.
And so this was something that we identified as needing to be addressed. As we identify those incremental changes, we will be bringing those forward. There's certainly some review that we're doing in terms of our growth plan right now, and phasing of development that will be coming to you later in the year. And so as those changes are identified, we bring those forward. There have been many changes to the official community plan. It's a living document since 2014, and those come through Planning Commission and then Council. And then it's recorded and publicly available.
Oh, that's a good answer. A living document, so it's revised and evolves regularly. Yeah, okay. That's good for me for the moment, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your response.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think aside from everything that was just discussed, I mean, my question was, this has been in place since 2014 and it's evolving, obviously. I kind of like the amendments and things that are in here. And so when we are talking to developers or people who want to do something with property, are we using this document still as a guideline for how they're directed in what they're shaking your head? Yes, thank you. That's good news.
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe Ms. Bryden wants to take this one, but yeah, we do use this in many different aspects. We use this to guide growth of the city, and we use this in conversations with investors and developers, and ensuring that policies are adhered to. When we get applications, we make sure that there's an alignment with the growth plan, which is the official community plan from the city's perspective.
Okay, so how often is this amendments are being made to this? I mean, we're looking at a 10-year mark right now since it's come into place.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We do amend this document quite regularly, We've done what we called a 5-year review, and then what we're doing now is we're taking pieces of it like this, the complete communities or the complete neighborhood guidelines, and bringing those forward and putting some focus on that. And as I mentioned, one of the major elements is our growth plan, which determines where growth occurs within the city. We're currently doing a review of that, and that'll be coming later this year. So yeah, those big pieces will be coming to you. And then, through different applications, you'll see amendments to the official community plan or different pieces of the official community plan as we evolve and grow as a city. And I will just mention that one of the major amendments that we made last year was repealing some of the neighborhood plans and then embedding some of those policies right into the party of the OCP so that they applied more generally.
Okay, that's great. So I know Commissioner Adams had inquired about the areas that were, the OCP was applied to. And so I guess maybe I haven't been in those areas. So talking about Westera, was most of the policy or the plan was applied to these areas that's listed? So you have Westera, South Regina, Coopertown, and then there's the Yards stop, anyway.
Yeah, so I think that's reference to those are the neighborhoods that have neighborhood plans or have been developed under the current official community plan. So these guidelines would have applied during their planning stages and throughout their development of those areas if they've been developed.
Okay. So Commissioner Adams had inquired about a strong, you mentioned that there was a strong policy. What is this strong policy we're talking about? I can't remember where you mentioned something. I didn't make any more notes. I'm sorry, I kind of like.
Through the chair, I just asked for clarification. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Adams.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking at the OCP itself. I think what Autumn was saying, and forgive me if I'm not saying what you're saying, right, but was that the broader official community plan, which has evolved since 2014, does speak to a range of issues that are not the focus of amendment here tonight in the appendices breakdown, that there's a series of goals, objectives, key actions set out in the OCP that continue to guide development beyond just what's stated here. I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, that's correct. So this document before you is just key changes that we're bringing forward today. Really focused on how do we make our neighborhoods complete? Where do we focus certain types of development? How do we evaluate certain types of applications? And then there's a focus on school site development, which has been, recently re-reviewed with the school boards. And so this is really focused around complete neighborhoods, but that doesn't, I guess, take away from the fact that we also have other official community plan policies that are still in effect and still apply to other, other topics.
Right, so as an example, the housing portion of the OCP has a goal 4 related to housing for persons with specific needs, so that might apply to an emergency shelter or an addictions treatment center or something, so those exist, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'd echo the commissioners before me. Thank you for a good report. There's a lot of detail in here. I have what's hopefully a housekeeping question, and I will echo an earlier comment that I hope you can forgive my ignorance in asking this question. In Amendment 1 of the proposed official community plan amendments, towards Gold 3 intensification. 2.7C talks about designation of primary intensification areas, and 2.7D is intensification, designation of secondary intensification areas. So I have a few questions about that. So first of all, that's moving definitions from the, like those are already nested in the definitions of the OCP, is that right?
Yeah, through the chair, they are already within the definitions, and they were added there through the HAF amendments last year. And through this amendment, we're moving them into policies, mostly for housekeeping purposes, to keep all the policies, the like sort of like policies together, and so they don't get missed when changes do happen.
Great, I love it and I support it. Will it be deleted from the definitions as well, or is it going to be?
Through the chair, I believe that's the intent, yeah, if it doesn't show here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I support it, and I support deleting it from the definitions, and I think that's the way to go. I just wanted to make sure that was what was going on here. If memory serves, I think we went through this when we made the HAF amendments. I was just hoping you could briefly walk me through. I mean, there's so many different like areas and identities and what have you. So we'll have primary intensification areas, secondary intensification areas, urban centers, urban corridors, transit hubs. Is the idea for these to be treated kind of separately? Are they sort of examples of each other? Like how do we end up with so many areas that sort of seem to mean similar things? And is there a way to clean that up so that folks like me that can't track that many balls have an easier time?
Through the chair, yeah, I see what you're saying. We did have a lot of discussion around what each of those areas mean. I mean, ultimately, they do have different applicability within different areas, even if it's not intended to be quite as simple for the most part. You know, sort of the impetus around transit hubs, those are scattered throughout the city. Those are the basis for the primary intensification nodes. And through the HAF sort of discussions last year, we took sort of that sort of broad look at those and decided, you know, that some tweaking was necessary. For the neighborhood hubs, urban centers, what was the other one? Local commercial area. Yeah, so those, broadly speaking, I think I would say that there was just a little bit less clarity than would be useful for them to be, you know, clearly applied, especially in new concept plans or new areas. We did struggle quite a bit with how to accommodate local commercial, especially within existing areas, and also new areas. New areas tended to have different sort of policies, but all sort of meant the same thing. So the intent was really to bring them all together so that they could all be considered under the same sort of framework rather than slightly different variations of the same thing. So ultimately we did try to create a little bit more definition around each of these areas. They do apply in different areas, and the intent is that they're more useful and clear to planners and developers who need to make decisions by them.
Great, thank you. And then I think my final question, depending on the answer, if we just looking at the again that 2.7C and 2.7D proposed amendments, it talks about how parcel may be designated primary intensification area if it is, and then the point 2 of both C and D is zoned or deemed suitable for zone residential and mixed-use zoning. So to me, it seems like that is very broad, where if it's like any parcel that's suitable or deemed suitable for residential or mixed-use zoning may be designated primary or secondary intensification area. Isn't that like everything other than, I don't know, half a dozen zones? So maybe just give me some clarity on that.
Sure, yeah, I can speak to that. When you read this entire 2.7D or C, you need to read it in its entirety, so we can't just cherry pick 2.7D2.
You know, I answered it myself, it's an and. Yeah. The answer is and. I apologize, Mr. Chair, thank you. I got it, I got there, I knew I would. Okay, that's all I have for now, and I apologize for the last question. Just so that everybody is clear, I read it as or when I was reading it to myself, thinking it could be 1, 2, or 3 in 2.7C and 2.7D. It says and. I apologize. Thank you for giving me that leeway. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Aston.
Thank you. Is there any statutory or regulatory requirement to redo the OCP in entirety ever? Or is it maybe like through the Planning and Development Act or whatever act it is? Is there any requirement to do that through the chair?
Through the chair, there's no legislation that requires that. Actually, in Saskatchewan, planning is voluntary. So we are an approving authority, and it is best practice to continually review our official community plan. We have set that policy for ourselves to review it at least every 5 years, I think, within our official community plan. But that's our own standard that we hold ourselves to.
Okay. It just seems like since 2014, there have been many changes and many amendments and many things. So I just wondered if it was, had been a subject of debate with the administration of having to go through that process in its entirety or not. I think just last year, there was a lot of changes made, even by this commission, and so I just wondered if there was any of that debate ever held.
Yeah, there is certainly conversations. At its onset, it was set out to be a 25-year plan, and we're 10, 11 years into that. Certainly bringing forward lots of amendments to keep the official community plan current is important. Continually evolving our policy to ensure that we are growing the way that council sets us out to grow through strategic priorities and those types of things. So yes, we are always looking at opportunity for advancing policies within the official community plan. And do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, through the chair. Just have to get my 2 cents worth in, I guess. So I think one of the bigger pieces of work, of course, for our community plan is our actual growth plan, and that's intensification and greenfield growth. And so that is the work, as Ms. Dawson indicated earlier, we are doing that work this year. It started a bit last year with a review of all our servicing agreement policy, which directly relates to our greenfield growth plan, as well as some intensification work. But I would say as part of that growth plan, we're looking at, our densification targets and where the city grows and how the city grows. And then, of course, the pieces that'll fall from that will be the work on updating our master plans, which form a big part of the official community plan.
My final question, most likely. The zoning bylaw is referred to in, I think it's in the background discussion, and that's obviously a very important and influential piece of legislation or bylaw as well. Is administration looking at redoing that in its entirety after the numerous changes that have been made in the last year or more? Is it time to refresh that, or where does that stand?
Thank you for that, Chair. Short answer, no. The zoning bylaw went under a major redo, a brand new zoning bylaw in 2019, and was a major part of work, and we're still, we work through that, and as Mr. Mario and team come up with like housekeeping amendments and things like that we need to do to keep our zoning bylaw up to date, in addition to the zoning amendments that come forward to this commission. Well, actually, all the housekeeping amendments come forward to the commission, and Ms. Dawson's indicating that she can also add to that.
Thank you, through the chair. I will warn Planning Commission that closer to the end of the year, we will be bringing some changes to the zoning bylaw forward. We really want to focus on, our customer-focused approach, ensuring that our regulatory provisions are clear and transparent, and with all the changes that we've been making to, allow for more housing and different considerations for intensification, it's kind of made a mess of our regulatory bylaw, and so we're looking on how do we clean that up and really make it clear to people what's happening where. I know that there's been conversations today about the primary intensification areas and the secondary intensification areas. How do we make those clear and transparent to people who are interested in purchasing properties or currently living in areas where there may be changes that are on the horizon?
I'll end with a question mark at the end of this, even though if it's more editorial. I think to the new council members, there's been a lot of changes, and so, and that's, the documents were meant to evolve, and a 25-year timeline was referred to, and I didn't know that, so that's good information. But I would encourage council to remember these conversations and think about them. It's fine to edit the documents, and that has to happen, but like I think it's almost sometimes has to be a refresh as well. So that wasn't a question, that was an editorial. So I'll end at that. Thanks to the chair.
That's okay. Thank you for that. For what it's worth, I might add, I have a motion that was ready to go, but didn't go forward because we were in the middle of budget to review all 9 Bibles, all 9 plans, trying to bite them three per year for the next 3 years kind of thing. So yeah, I think we're telepathically connected here, because it's something that I definitely want to do, and it would help me understand them more, and the rest of 9 of 11 new councillors. So good points. I have a couple questions on Appendix A, page 2, amendment number 2. I noticed we added, it sounds very innocuous, so I'm just checking. When we add something like a safe walkable environment, is that code for something that I'm not aware of? Who wants to answer that? And what I'm asking is, what's it going to cost my ratepayers? Who wants to answer that?
Through the chair, I will say that we had the most innocent and the best of intentions, and we're not trying to pull something on you for sure.
Okay.
I don't see this costing anything. This is really just about aligning policy with goals and values and things like that.
Okay. So let's go to the second one, which is the next page, page 3 of Appendix A, amendment number 8. Ensuring the city center maintains a healthy urban forest. So I'm assuming we're paying a city planner to review these, is that correct? What level of employee would be looking at this?
Through the chair, yeah, we led the conversation, but we have also involved technical staff as needed.
Right.
If you have a specific question about that one, we do have Mr. Chris Sale
Okay.
up here, if you have a question about that.
Well, I see that we say, let's have proper soil volumes, and I kind of look at this and go, duh, like, why would we have to pay someone to analyze this, to write that up? Are we going to start prescribing the types of shovels we're going to use too next? I don't get that. Why is that important to make that little change?
Sure. Through the chair, this is really just our highest level document, and from there, there are standards that follow. So this is really just setting the tone to make other changes. And we sort of had, as we had the policies open, this was identified as something that we could improve just to make sure that we have sort of that base to ensure that all of our construction standards and design guidelines follow. So in this case, we've identified a concern that naturally within the downtown, trees tend to suffer a little bit because we don't have the proper natural depth of soil. So we need to make deliberate attempts to try to improve that.
But someone in charge of that should know that, right?
Through the
So
chair,
to-
this
to-
is just setting the policy to ensure that
Right.
everyone is sort of on the
Right.
same level.
It just seems like we're spending money on the obvious to write something when someone who knows trees knows that they need a proper amount of soil volume. It just sounded weird to me that, two little innocuous things like that. And I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. But we do have professionals on staff that know trees, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Pardon? Yes, exactly. That's the end of it for me. Mr. Gaisier.
I just, I don't have a question for administration. I think to give some, I guess, outside of administration insight from where my perspective would be, if one of the reasons that my client as a policy writer, if one of the reasons that they weren't able to meet goals was that they didn't have good shovels, I would find a policy that required good shovels. So speaking to your point, I mean, do we really need to write that we have good shovels? Like, well, sometimes if that's the reason that we're not meeting our goals, you do. And so I think it's a good question. I think it's a fair question. But also I think a lot of this stuff that we're seeing comes out of experience that the policy writers and the regulatory advisors end up running into trouble where various clients or various folks who are, whether in the city or outside of the city, expected to meet, in this case, the requirements of a healthy downtown forest or a healthy tree, don't, and when asked why not, they point to, well, nothing in your rules say that we have to. And so if they don't have policy that specifically allows them to have sufficient soil volumes, and that's called out, I don't know if that's what's happened or if they're, if administration is kind of acting preemptively, but that can often be the reason that a tree dies downtown, is that the soil volume wasn't protected. So I don't mean to presume that that's where this came from, but I can tell you from my experience in policy writing and policy drafting, very often the direction comes from a lack of robustness in policy to allow for this kind of regulatory approach or this kind of contractual approach to be made. So that's my experience. I'm saying that as a friendly gesture. I hope that that puts some context to it. But I can tell you that I have been in places where shovels were the problem and that I did write policy. I personally wrote policy that effectively said equipment will meet certain standards set out by certain requirements. So I personally have seen policy that, as silly as it might sound, was more or less effectively to that level. And I mean, to be fair, any contract, if you had a contract between two servers, the lawyers might say, well, it didn't say that you had to do this or this or this other thing, and the people who did that wouldn't do it. So I mean that in a friendly way, but that's just my experience working with policy myself. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll just add on, soil volumes allow us to cut grass less because the moisture, you don't have to cut the grass. I remember that from, anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in there. So we don't have to cut the grass as much, but anyways, it does make a difference.
want to close debate? Okay, thank you. And I'll ask the clerk then to start the vote.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Lovely.
I do have a troubling last name. It's not that complicated.
Tell them debate is closed.
Sherry is not allowed to vote.
Still trying to talk here. Okay. Commissioner Gaisler.
Favor.
Commissioner Kell. In favor? Okay. Commissioner Sante.
Agreed.
Commissioner Wilson.
In favor.
Commissioner Adams.
In favor.
Commissioner Aston.
In favor.
Councillor Rasevich.
In favor.
Councillor Robbins.
In favor.
And Mr. Chair.
In favor.
The motion is carried 9-0.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Ms. Wilson, any opposed? Carried. Good night, everybody. Thank you.